Well, BC marks a big anniversary tomorrow. For more on that, we're joined now by Vaughn Palmer from the Vancouver Sun. Good morning, Vaughn.
Good morning, Simi. 150th anniversary of British Columbia deciding to throw in its lot with that place on the other side of the mountains, Canada.
By the way, I am a Confederation baby. I was born in 1971, and the premier at the time made sure that every baby born in 1971 got one of those certificates, right? Saying that we were, and I have one in my baby photo album, that I was born in the 100th year of BC's Confederation.
Well, a big celebration in 1971. The government actually put aside $30 million to celebrate this year, but we're kind of distracted by a few other things.
Yes.
But still, worth marking. The interesting thing, and I know you're a student of history, Simi, is you look back history far enough, everything seems inevitable. But
so true.
It really wasn't inevitable that British Columbia would become part of Canada. There's a lot of Americans, including the then president, Ulysses S. Grant, and his Secretary of State, who thought that BC might fall into American hands. They'd bought Alaska. They had already made Oregon a state. Washington was a territory. And with only the audacity that the Americans could muster, they suggested to Great Britain that, why don't you just hand over British Columbia to settle outstanding claims for reparations from the U.S. Civil War? The Americans were pretty sure the British owed them some money for how things had gone there and for helping the South. And Britain didn't reject that idea out of hand. I think it's fair to say that, they didn't accept it, but they didn't reject it. And hey, there were some people here who lived in the provincial capital in Victoria who thought, Americans might not be such a bad idea, it might be welcome. They did negotiate terms of union. I was just scanning them this morning. British Columbia is pretty demanding, We asked for a lot. We asked Ottawa to take on our debts. We asked them to make sure they provided a steamer service to San Francisco, not quite the precursor of the cruise ship industry, but still. And, they had to build a railway to British Columbia across the Rocky Mountains, the prairies, northern Ontario, and they had to have it done within 10 years. So, some pretty tough demands there. The railway did not arrive within 10 years, and at that point, the BC legislature voted to leave.
That didn't take
Quebec.
long.
We invented separatism. And I love the comment. One of Canada's governors general, you can just see him rolling his eyes after all this back and forth. He referred to British Columbia as the spoiled child of Canadian Confederation. So even then, we were a pain in the neck. And anyway, here we are, 150th anniversary, cause for celebration. One thing I would flag out of the terms of union, though, because needless to say, the Indigenous people of British Columbia were not consulted on this decision, but Ottawa did write into the terms of union that Indians, as they were known then, and Indian lands and Indian rights were the exclusive territory of the federal government. The Canada didn't quite trust the settlers in British Columbia to look after the interests of the Indigenous people, and they told us kind of their hands off. Again,
interesting.
I think if you follow the history, it's not like Ottawa looked after the interests of the Indigenous people all that well either, but it's right there in the terms of union that, first of all, we hedged, and second of all, they hedged regarding the Indigenous people.
Okay, that's coming up tomorrow. Also, yesterday was another...
Tonight, actually, I think. So, yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yesterday was also a bit of an anniversary, too. I don't know where the time has gone, but it's been 4 years in office already for Premier John Horgan.
Yeah, Premier John Horgan, fourth anniversary, becoming Premier July 18th, 2017. And, I think if you went back to that date, you'd find even some new Democrats would have been surprised that he survived in office this long. Remember, the New Democrats took office on the strength of a power-sharing agreement with the Greens. They still only had a bare majority in the legislature, but the transition was fairly quick. First of all, one of the Liberals agreed to serve as Speaker, so that reduced the opposition ranks. That was Darryl Plecas, and that gave Horgan a fair chance to show what he could do, and I think you go back, those first 2 years in particular as Premier, he earned what was, in fact, fairly impressive polling numbers. Horgan, I covered him in opposition. He was an angry, frustrated man. As Premier, he was confident and decisive, and I think did very, very well. And of course, last September sees the opening to go for a majority, which he won. And whatever one thinks of his decision to do that, and I think it was cynical and opportunistic, but it doesn't matter. It created an election where people, the only real question was, do you want to change governments in the middle of a pandemic? And the answer was no. And here we are today. He's marking his 4th anniversary, a clear run to the next election, which on the books, the next election is set for October the 19th, 2024. I don't think Horgan feels bound by that any more than he felt bound by the last one, but here's an interesting thing. He turns 65 in August 2024, and some New Democrats are asking themselves in the back of their mind, will he run again, or will he go out at the top of his game, which is where he is right now?
Well, here's the thing, and as you know this much better than I do, is that BC politicians, particularly premiers, don't tend to go out at the top of their game in this province, Vaughn. They tend to overstay their welcome a little bit and get pushed out.
That's a very good point. And, if you walk through the Hall of the Premiers at the Legislature building, or the Hall of Shame, one might call it, for some of the people in there, there's 36 premiers since we joined Canada, so one every 3 or 4 years. Most of them were one term. Some of them didn't even last a whole term. Horgan, if he sticks around, Horgan later this year will become the longest-serving NDP premier in BC history, so he passes Mike Harcourt. And if he sticks around a couple more years, he'll pass Christy Clark, and he'll be number 6 or 7 on the list of premiers. Premiers, in BC don't last that long. And, of course, the other thing that happens is it's very easy as a premier to be seduced by your polling numbers.
Exactly.
Polling, it's only a snapshot. It isn't a crystal ball. And if John Horgan wants to know what can happen to your polling numbers, all he has to do is ask Premier Adrian Dix, who had the election win in the bag in 2013 with 2 or 3 weeks to go and lost. So politics will return. We are a contentious place. Just ask the rest of Canada, which has been putting up with us for 150 years.
Well, just ask every other ex-BC premier out there.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of them wandering around out there still. We've got a lot of ex-premiers, and once they've left office, they tend to get, honored and sometimes even get things named after them. But it's a fickle place, and it's a challenging place to govern. And with the pandemic fading as a news story, and let's hope that continues, then all the other challenges come back, and Horgan faces a lot of them going forward.
Sure does, Vaughn. Thank you.
Bye-bye, Simi.